Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of my podcast, and today you have just me, I'm afraid. This has been recorded on the 21st of December 2022, and I thought I would hop on the bandwagon of doing the 2023 predictions, or in this case, anti-predictions from the world of sales and marketing. A lot of change obviously happened post-COVID in the world we now find ourselves in, as organizations are still grappling with the hybrid way of working, and this is impacting certainly sales is no different to any other business function that is out there trying to figure this out. If we take a step back and think about the world of sales and fundamentally what are we trying to achieve at its rawest, kind of most basic level, is meet with a person or people and sell them something. You know, nothing has changed from the world of door-to-door selling when you were selling vacuum cleaners or gas servicing, or if you were cold calling to sell advertising space back in the day, or how I was selling mortgage advice for £10 a lead back in the day, through to my world of recruitment, again, trying to set meetings with HR leaders or sales leaders to sell why they should work with me and fundamentally Michael Page International to run their recruitment. Fast forward to today, for the most part, in most industries, a human being is going to have to be involved in the sales process to buy something. Yes, at the lower end of the market, so the low cost, low risk, high volume, we are in a world where this can be fulfilled by Amazon, or you can buy things directly online, even things like Salesforce, a single CRM instance. You can go to salesforce.com and buy that yourself, or a Sales Navigator license, or a HubSpot license, or a Zoho license. You can buy that yourself without having to talk to anybody, without then having to talk to customer success, and so on. We will get to that debate in this episode. But fundamentally, for the most part, for most industries, in the world of sales, you need to talk to people and then take them through a sales process to sell the value of what you versus potentially the competition. The world that we now find ourselves in today, however, there are many, many, many ways, one might argue, that this can be done in terms of getting people's attention, if you will. We have access to lots and lots of data, both of our own first-party proprietary data to third-party data to intent data to all sorts of things. We have more than enough technology that we can shake a stick at to help enable all of this. And of course, we have lots and lots of people out there telling you what is working and isn't working and so on and so forth. But if we break this down to what I believe to be the three main channels to start a conversation with somebody, possibly four: the phone, so the good old telephone call, email, and social media. And of course, within those, there are varying routes to market that one can do. So if we start with the good old telephone, i.e. just picking up the phone and having a conversation with people, still lots of debate around this as to whether cold calling is dead, whether cold calling works or not. And my view is that it depends on who you are as a salesperson. It depends on your skills and your abilities to do a cold call, to execute a cold call, because cold calling is not easy. I've been there and done it. I believe that the industries you are cold calling into will also have an impact as to where you'll have the success. But therein lies the challenge in terms of people saying cold calling does or doesn't work. If you look at some research, albeit this was a couple of years ago from McKinsey, where it's how data analytics helps sales reps win more deals. Point 3 in this article is top performers favor cold calls over cold emails, and video is emerging as a top channel. Across 40,000 deals we looked at, old-fashioned telephone calls were superior for getting people's initial attention. And that's the key here is the initial attention. Because fundamentally, if you can be talking to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people a day to get their attention, whether that then sets to a meeting, and that's fundamentally what you're trying to do, but actually having a conversation with someone, you're already kind of creating the start of that cliche brand awareness journey. However, if you take that a step further and you use technologies such as connect and sell, so power assisted dialers, and you have a very clearly defined target audience you want to cold call into, and you have a good, clean data set, the technology platforms, these power assisted dialers such as connect and sell, when set up and enabled properly with a skilled sales force that can execute cold calls effectively, can be an immensely powerful way to create awareness and start a conversation, and more importantly, set meetings with people to then qualify further in however your sales processes work, to then help start and kick off that sales journey in terms of whether they should work with you, use your product or service. So from my perspective, I actually think, and it's ironic me saying this because I've in the years gone by, I've really put my hands up there and been part of that. The anti-cold calling brigade. Cold calling is dead. Robots are going to take over SDRs roles, sales development roles, and so on, which is an interesting debate when we look at some Gartner research later on. But actually, stepping out of that kind of bubble and looking into industry, speaking to people that do it and execute it well, and then you get analysts such as the analysts, the research articles from the Worlds and McKinsey's, analysing that number of deals, 40,000 deals, where the cold call actually was the best or most favoured route to start that initial awareness perspective, then you can't really argue with that. And I would suggest most, or the majority of sales leaders would welcome to have their reps setting 6 or 7 or 8, 9, 10, 12, however many net new meetings per week or 5 per day, to then move that into top of pipeline conversations. But it all comes down to that execution piece, and it all comes down to, have you enabled your team to actually create and execute a cold call or not? And again, this isn't a question of one or the other, because we then look to the next channel, and the next channel, of course, is email. Now, email is in an interesting place at the moment, because the debates or the narrative that I can see unfolding on social and for the last couple of years around this has been more around, dare I say it, the science of the email. So doubling down on subject line, doubling down on whether it should be more text oriented, i.e. sent as more like a text message. Of course, it's going to be text oriented because it's obviously text, to length, to content, to pattern interrupts, are all different types of things. Whether you should put GIFs, images, links, videos into the emails, the cadences or touches that should be set within the platforms that drive enable this, so the sales lofts and the outreaches of the world, which these organizations are raising hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment, which is moving them to the $1 billion valuation mark. Interesting in terms of what that might look like over the next couple of years. But again, this isn't an and or conversation, because I saw actually an interesting post earlier today from a gentleman called Steve Elliott, who's at Korn Ferry, saying that actually cold email into the enterprise is not going to be that successful. And the reason being is, even if you have the most perfectly crafted email with the perfect cadence and you've used AI to analyze it and write the content even, and we'll come on to generative AI later in the podcast, is that they're just not getting through. they're not getting through because the spam filters, the technologies that are put in place just won't allow it. And if any of you work in the enterprise, I'm pretty sure that you will get an email every morning with those emails that are trapped in a folder. Do you even bother looking at those emails? So we're not even getting through to. So it's irrelevant whether you're sending 100, 1,000, or 100,000 emails. If they're not actually getting to their intended recipients, then of course it's not working. However, one can't deny that email does and can work when it is inserted into the sales process as part of a overall, dare I say it, multiple touch approach. But I think from a cold email perspective, certainly within the enterprise space, it is going to be interesting to see how the narrative of these sales cadences that are purely reliant on email starts to play out. Because my guess is, and this is purely an assumption, I'm by no means an expert in the world of sales engagement and writing engagement emails and writing cadences within these platforms, but it's fundamentally probably a cold call or a call that is then followed up with an email, which may well be more successful than necessarily just starting with a straight email, or it may well be call, email, and then the third kind of point of the triangle in terms of the three routes to market from a sales outreach perspective is, of course, social, which is the world of social selling. I'm a huge advocate of it. Again, my view is that social selling is better suited to account-based marketing style approach, where you are having multiple stakeholders, where the deal cycles typically are longer, the deal values are higher, and therefore you have more time to use social as another route to get and create attention. So back to that McKinsey stat around the 40,000 deals and the cold call being the most favored route to get that initial attention. This is where, again, I feel that when executed well and supported by other outreach approaches, that this concept of getting attention through social, because the challenge with social selling is too many people sell over social, which is why people don't believe that social selling works, which is why for the most part people necessarily don't believe that social media is an effective channel as a route to generate pipeline, because of what they receive and what they see on social, but also because it's really, really hard to prove, if you will, that social selling works as a top of funnel origination tool. And the reason behind that is because it's back to that point around getting attention, and then the sales person, business development person, lawyer, accountant, consultant, whomever, recording into a record of choice. It could be a CRM system, could be a sales engagement platform. Kind of where you're recording this is becoming less important in terms of the debate of the actual platform, but you need to be able to understand the origination of a human conversation with someone. And of course, from a social selling perspective, because you've put a post out on social, somebody may see it. You may then follow up with an email or a connection request. You may then follow up with a cold call, or possibly even a referral. You've already created awareness and you've already created that attention, but it could actually be then another route that actually creates that conversation. But then without actually asking the person as to how, the why, and as in the recipient of the call or the recipient of the email, the how, the why, the when, unless they explicitly say, oh, it was because of XYZ that I saw online, a post that you created or a comment that you made, that I then took your call, or I then, assuming emails get through, I opened your email, or I then accepted your your connection request. Social selling is an immensely powerful top of funnel mechanism when executed correctly to drive that initial awareness and drive that initial conversation. But fundamentally, in all of this for 2023, when you've got people saying this is dead, that's dead, this works, this doesn't work, you need to double down on this, you need to double down on that. I don't believe any of that is necessarily true, because fundamentally my instinct is that actually we need to take a long, hard look at the overall sales and marketing narrative and accept that these are the three primary channels to a conversation with someone. It's actually how are we, or what is going to be the shortest route to that conversation in combination of all three of these, dependent on the industries, in my view, that you are selling into, what it is you are selling, and who your ideal customer persona is. And I know that there'll be people here that will be listening that will be debating, well, cold calling is the best route in, or actually, Alex, I disagree with your statements on email outreach not being effective, because it is effective, and we are being really successful in using it. And likewise, those that use social selling, myself included, social selling is my primary route to market, but I'm not having to operate at high volume or a high volume engagement to drive the success that I need as an independent consultant. If you're a high volume sales rep, you cannot, I'm going to say this, rely solely on social selling to do it, to drive that inbound, because you just cannot get the scale. And we all know that if you choose to go down the automated route on social selling with automated outreach in terms of connection requests, the platform is doubling down on this and suspending accounts and suspending people indefinitely in some cases. So the question is for 2023, what are kind of the big predictions for sales over and above cold calling, email outreach in whatever shape or form that might look like, and social selling? And of course, we can't help then default back to the technology play, because it's the technology, if you will, that is starting to drive this disruption and this change. So I'm now going to refer to a Gartner piece, which was published 10th of October, 2022, 7 technology disruptions that will completely change sales, which is a pretty bold statement to make. And I don't know whether they order these in importance, but these are the 7 technology disruptions affecting sales through to 2027. So multimodality, generative AI, multimodality, generative AI, AR, so augmented reality, and VR, virtual reality, emotion AI, digital twin of the customer, digital humans, machine customers. So some ones in there which I think are interesting. So generative AI, the last couple of weeks, obviously OpenAI, ChatGPT has gone to the masses. We'll come to that in a second. AR, VR, that's been talked about, of course, Meta and all surrounding concepts around that. Emotion AI is interesting because we're already starting to see sentiment technology baked into some of the platforms that I've mentioned. Digital twin of the customer, digital humans, and machine customers is an interesting one as well. But if we just zip through these quickly, so please bear with me. I'm going to be reading verbatim from the post on this. So multimodality, by 2030, even though the graphic is by 27, sellers will only manually enter information into applications if they so choose. The days of begging sales to enter data is over. Multimodality provides multiple methods for sellers to log activities other than entering them through a keyboard into a CRM. These technologies all interface with CRM technology and encourage frontline sellers to capture CRM data. For example, sellers could tap their phone, call, or even chat with the CRM, while an AI bot takes down their inputs and fills in the required information. I mean, this is nothing really new, because this technology already exists in terms of voice to text recognition. You can already create your notes into notes onto CRM. You've already got sales call recording technology, which is recording sales calls and then doing really interesting things with all of that data. So this multimodality piece as a prediction versus an anti-prediction, my take is it's already happening. It's just how it is actually being put into the overall process, how it's being used, and more importantly, how sellers are being coached as to how this is going to help them. If we refer back to the way that it is worded, of the days of begging sales to enter data is over. The fact that perceptions we have to beg salespeople to do it kind of shows how little value they put into the input of data into a CRM system, which is a whole different question of the what's in it for me and why should I do this. The generative AI piece is an interesting one. I want to come back to that. A mix of augmented and virtual realities. So they're saying by 2025, 80% of all interactions will occur in digital channels. I would argue that's already happening today. The metaverse, I think I don't really see that as entering B2B anytime soon in terms of being part of a sales process, if I'm honest. I mean, you could just hop on a Zoom call or a Teams call or actually have in person. I don't really see why you need to get somebody to do this in VR unless you're selling VR. Then, of course, it would make sense for you to want to run a meeting in VR. Again, AR, I believe, is an interesting one. I'm not an expert in AR in any shape or form. But again, I think it'd be interesting to how you might work with like marketing to think about how you might use QR codes and AR in your marketing materials to maybe make your top of funnel content more engaging, stand out from the competition. But as an anti-prediction, if you will, I mean, already one could argue pretty much all of our interactions occurring in digital channels, apart from the fact when they're not, which is when you're actually having an in-person conversation. As I said, the whole concept of metaverse and VR, I don't believe will be in B2B sales anytime soon. AR, I think, is more of a marketing related angle to all of that. However, caveat in terms of the VR piece, that may have a play in enablement and coaching, but that's more of an internal engagement tool organizationally rather than an external engagement tool. Emotion AI is an interesting one. So by 2025, AI identification of emotions will influence 30% of messaging a buyer receives. Again, a bold statement to say that's going to happen inside 2 years. Emotional intelligence is important, particularly for salespeople who need to learn to read the room, which is hard to do in virtual environments. Q Emotion AI, which analyzes, processes, and responds to emotion based on 4 components. Natural language process-based phonetic and text analysis, which includes sentiment analysis and in emails and the ability to find patterns and trends. Well, sentiment analysis is already happening within some of the bigger players for email outreach and email engagement. So that's already here today. Computer vision-based facial expression analysis, which looks at patterns and trends in response to stimuli. Audio-based speech analysis, which detects a combination of emotional states with facial and muscle movement. Biometric and other sensors like heart rate to analyze behavior. By 2024, Emotion AI will influence approximately half of the online ads buyers see. So this is now slightly different because they were saying this is inside 2 years, and I feel this has more of a B2C than necessarily B2B play, although the argument is that B2B is becoming B2C and so on. This technology reads faces, emails, and determines which ads will work for a given buyer. These applications of Emotion AI will change the way sales teams engage with customers, and by extension will also change sales enablement. This for me is some pretty bold statements. Email sentiment analysis, fine. I get that, understand that. I understand why you would look at that as another additive data point to help shape content, which works, and you can then flip that to content that you put out onto marketing campaigns, social campaigns for social selling at an individual level or what have you. Not entirely sure, if I'm honest, that the computer vision-based facial expression analysis I don't believe that your prospects or customers will be too happy to know that a piece of technology is analyzing their facial expression to then help them, the seller, kind of react in real time. And from a biometric and other sensors, again, I'm not exactly going to see people agreeing to plug in their Fitbits or their Apple Watch data so that a seller could analyze the behavior and emotions of that person, which in of itself requires a unique skill to be able to understand and react accordingly to that. The audio-based speech analysis, though, is an interesting one because we are already seeing that in play today with the likes of Gong or Refract, which record sales conversations and help sales enablements and sales teams, or those that coach teams to understand what is working and what isn't working, talk to listen ratio and so on and so forth. You've got examples within Microsoft Teams and customer time and telesales environment, where one of their banks is using this. So, for example, if you're speaking to somebody about insurance and you mention you're going on holiday, the system will hear that you mentioned the word holiday, and then in real time, the sales agent, if you will get a pop-up on their screen going, they mentioned they're going on holiday, ask the question, have you got holiday insurance? So that for me is an interesting one around how that might start to play out. Again, I believe this is going to be different industries going to react to this in different ways, which actually then comes full circle back to the CRM data input piece, is that even at a basic level, if you're on Zoom or Teams, all of your calls can be now transcribed. It's then more the question of the person having the call. So if you're a lawyer or consultant or accountant, would you want all your calls recorded? But the clients you're talking with want all their calls recorded. And then how might you use that data and insights to drive insights and analysis? So Emotion AI by 2025, 27, even 2030, I believe that is a big, big call. I believe that potentially SaaS sales, I can see it being more comfortable in that environment, more traditional. I use the word traditional, therein lies a challenge in its own right, but more conservative industries, so professional services, manufacturing, and so on. This is going to be an interesting one, notwithstanding, I guess, the ethical challenges behind all of this. The digital twin of the customer, the market for digital twin enabling software and services is expected to reach a global revenue of 150 billion by 2030, up from 9 billion in 2022. Digital twins, again, yes, manufacturing processes, all that kind of stuff where you don't want to build a manufacturing process from the start, so you do it in a digital twin environment. So Microsoft Bonsai is a big example of this and how they use digital twin technology. So go and search Microsoft Bonsai to see what that's all about. They go on to go, the digital twin takes in data from personas and runs tests for sales messaging, sales processes, marketing campaigns, and note what's working and what doesn't. Unlike a simulation, a digital twin is dynamic. It's constantly receiving data, can update its findings, and enabling analysis in real time as new signals come in. Feel we're stretching the again, back to my anti-predictions, I feel we're stretching the digital twin concept here in terms of running sales messaging, sales processes, marketing campaigns, and so on. I'm not saying that you couldn't do it. I just don't necessarily believe that it's got an application in that, because I just don't feel that there's enough scale to do this unless you're an Amazon or equivalent in terms of an e-tailer. Then maybe that digital twin approach might work. But if you're running a very defined account-based marketing strategy, or even into a very defined industry and a defined persona, I just don't think the scale is going to work in my perspective. Digital humans, number 6. So by 2026, the dates keep moving. 50% of buyers will interact with a digital human in a buying cycle. The sales force of the future is a hybrid of humans and machines. Digital humans that engage with customers will fundamentally change who sells and how they sell. The use case for digital humans isn't about replacing humans. It's about taking on tasks that humans don't want to do, such as handle lead nurturing, old opportunities, or stale leads. So, again, can I see this working in professional services by 26? So legal, accounting, consulting, which is where my world and my expertise is. Could I even see this necessarily working if you work for one of the big SaaS vendors, enterprise-led sales? I don't necessarily know, and I think the digital human is kind of again stretching the concept, because if we look at, and we're kind of bleeding into the generative AI here, but if we look at kind of technologies like Synthesia, so Synthesia.io, incredible kind of digital avatars, if you will, used for all sorts of things like training videos, intro sales videos, enablement videos, marketing videos, and so on and so forth. Huge, very, very clever human-like technology. So yes, this could be customer success. Could it be handle lead nurturing? I don't know. Old opportunities or stale leads? Again, I don't know. I don't believe that if I was an old opportunity that got out of date, I prefer to have a phone call from a conversation maybe, versus I guess the route would be you create a video which then has to be sent by by email, or maybe through social. Of course, we touched on those two channels in terms of success rates or not, as the case may be. So again, I think it's around where is the right place to insert this technology in the entire engagement sales process, if you will. So again, for my anti-prediction, not entirely sure we're there in the way that necessarily it's seen here. And then we got the final piece before I go back to generative AI, because I really do believe that's very interesting in the sales perspective. CEOs and CIOs believe that by 2030, 1/5 of their total revenue might come from machine customers. Your new target market is machines. Machine customers are non-human economic actors that obtain goods or services in exchange for payments. They constitute a buyer, and a big one. It's already happening today. Financial services products use AI to help consumers negotiate bank fees and get their refunds automatically. And there are cars that diagnose themselves and pre-order parts for service. Stretching it a little, I feel. For many organizations, the idea of the machine customer is not yet a reality, but now is the time to start tracking its evolution and begin building a digital human sales force. Sales will have to adapt to machines which are logical, reliable, and valuable. Can't necessarily argue with that, although logical only depends on what data they're working from and the program and the algorithms that they are given to work on a logic basis. When machine customers become a more tangible part of the buy mix, sales organizations will need to plan for the ensuing enablement issues. Again, bold statement, 2030, in organizational terms, is not too far away at all. I believe it will be, again, industry specific. So it's given kind of financial services, it's given kind of cars that are diagnosing themselves. So yes, maybe this is going to be more prevalent in the high volume, low risk types of the sales environment, where you don't necessarily need to engage with a human, and we prefer the self-serve route versus necessarily talking to a human being, because we kind of know what we want. We want it quick, we want it now, and we just want to get on with it. As you start to move up the complexity of a sales process of a product or service that's been sold, the value of it that it is becoming, my sense is this is going to be less relevant. It could be more around, back to my earlier point, is how does this get then inserted into the overall sales and marketing process. But if we then come back to the generative AI piece, this for me is going to be an interesting one into 23 and beyond. So generative AI is nothing really new. It's ChatGPT-3 or rather ChatGPT, forgive me, from OpenAI that has kind of brought this to the masses and kind of brought it to the fore. Jasper AI has been around for a while, raised a bunch of cash, given it $1 billion valuation recently, and does this in different ways, and is designed to help from content creation across all different sides of things. Canva, the brilliant marketing kind of creation tool, that's a fair way to describe it, or content creation tool, has launched their text to image service recently. But just take a step back before we get into it. Generative AI, by 2025, 30% of outbound messages from large organizations will be synthetically generated. Content is increasingly important for sales, considering customers expect hyper-relevant and personalized experiences, and it's hard for sellers to keep up. With generative AI, sales teams will never have to beg for content again. Generative AI produces content like images, videos, emails, presentations, data sheets, typically created by humans, and does so without direct human bias through either an augmented or automated approach. I'm not entirely sure on the direct human bias, but we'll come to that. Augmented leverages existing creative workflows collaborative with humans. Automated, like a factory producing content. Although AI can help to ensure the right content is available for sellers, sales organizations still must ensure that content is easily accessible and in the right place and the right time. So, if we go back to the three kind of channels, which I believe will remain true for a while, to create attention, and create conversation, which is the phone call, the email, and social media. Forgive me while I have a sip of tepid tea, which is sat here. So those three channels, so phone call, email, and social media. Generative AI, I believe, is going to change the game. So I've been tinkering with Jasper. I've been tinkering with OpenAI ChatGPT. I've been using a product called Lately.ai for my social media creation, in terms of how that works to repurpose content I've already created, be it written, audio, or video, to turn into more engaging content. What's interesting with the generative AI piece, if you haven't gone to ChatGPT and played around with OpenAI or set up an account for free, I highly recommend that you do. It is fascinating what it can create. The human bias piece, I think, is interesting, because there is debate around the fact that the ChatGPT data is only as good as the data that it's, the content that is consuming, and some experts in the space are saying that actually you should go and play, which is again another OpenAI product, you should go and sign up for their Playground product within OpenAI, which looks at real-time data on the web. But by the by, ChatGPT has gone to the masses, got the press's attention, and this for me is where I believe there's going to be some interesting developments, because actually what it comes down to, and this is no different to sales in its basic form, are the prompts or the questions that you ask of this technology. The better the prompt, or the better the question, the better way the question is designed, the better the content that is then generated, which then could be used to create a call script, for example, or could be used to create an email campaign, or could be used to create a social media campaign to support your social selling. And by that, I mean, on the social media side, you could say, write me 10 tweets about the 5 challenges that CFOs are facing in the retail sector, and it will write those tweets. You could ask it to write you a call script selling to CMOs in the financial services sector, and it will write that call script. You could ask it to summarize and I've seen these videos on TikTok, you could ask it to summarize the call earnings. It was, I think, the Netflix call earnings was put into ChatGPT, and the person asked them, can you summarize this in 10 bullet points? And it did it. So this then means if you are managing enterprise accounts and it's going to be a much quicker, more efficient way to get 70 to 80% of the knowledge that you need to have at your fingertips versus necessarily trawling through multiple kind of Google pages. And this is why there is this debate that will this type of technology eventually replace search. I think it certainly will be additive to search and augment search. So I feel that as sales leaders and marketing leaders, I do believe that we need to be paying a lot of attention to generative AI and where this may take us. The text to image stuff is pretty cool that I'm playing around with in Canva. So you literally say, I want an image of a robot on a mountain in an alien background type sort of thing, and it will create that. Or I want an image of Father Christmas sitting on a reindeer, or I want an image of a person working on a document, or whatever it is. Again, it comes back to the prompt and asking really good or prompting really good questions will then get the results that you need. This, however, does open up a whole conversation. I was just only on a phone call with a lawyer early today around this, because they're looking at them themselves, a law firm that I'm working with, around what are the ethics behind this. So would we have to declare that our social media posts are actually written by AI? Would we have to declare this email campaign is actually 100% created by AI? You know, this Gartner talks to the digital human and talks to the machine Will we have to declare? And I believe the answer is going to be yes, in some shape or form. We are going to have to declare that this is actually a 100% AI generated conversation or 100% generated AI post. Because if you think about either an email perspective or a social selling perspective, people engage with the content on there, or they engage with the email. They make the assumption that it's written by you, and that is your thinking, your thought process. And if all you've done is just put a simple prompt in, and it's generated all of this, then could that be construed as misleading? And I think there's a yes and a no debate around that. But from my perspective, this whole generative AI piece is going to be very, very interesting into where that this takes us in the next 12 to 18 months. Because genuinely, if a salesperson wants to engage in social selling, they don't actually have to go to marketing and ask for help on their content, because you can genuinely say, write me 10 social media posts for LinkedIn, written in the voice of Seth Godin or Gary Vee or whoever you want to sound like, or create this email that will talk to Gen Z. And it will then write this content in a way that talks to that person. So predictions moving forward from my perspective, yeah, I think cold calling is going to stay around. You know, you can't. The phone is never going to go away. The way that we interact with phones may be different in terms of that shape or form. Email is here to stay. I think sales leaders need to reevaluate how it is being used. And of course, if you're not baking social into your top of funnel attention generation creation side of things from a sales perspective, then we may as well, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to be additive to your already your pipeline that you're already generating and creating. Forgive me, another sip of my tepid tea here. However, if we look at kind of where we can be today, if you had no legacy challenges at all, and you had a brilliant CRM system or sales engagement platform, so it's a record of choice, a system which holds all the data around your contacts and the activities that are happening. If you then layer on top of that relationship capital analysis, so if you layer on a Microsoft Sales Insights or the Salesforce equivalent, or a IntraHive or Ebster, those are the four platforms kind of spring choice, which then analyze your relationship analytics and who genuinely knows who. So now you can identify the quickest route to a potential referral conversation with someone. If you then layer that with the Sales Navigator platform synced into your CRM system, so not only do you know the who knows who in terms of today, but you use Sales Navigator and their deep sales approach to understand where are the people that we want to get to know and what is the shortest route to a conversation with them. You might then want to layer intent data on top of your marketing data to start to get some insight around where people are in the funnel and who you should be engaging with. So an interesting angle on that, you could be doing this today. You don't even need to invest in intent data. Go to your marketing teams and go, I want to understand at an organizational level over the last month what marketing activity has happened. Web-based, email-based, open rates, unsubscribes, downloads, sign-ups, all of the things, not at an individual level, but at an organizational level. And if you're seeing a big spike in activity from one organization, that would suggest there is something going on. And then if you have the ability to analyze your relationship capital, either through the technologies I just described, or through Sales Navigator, or through both, then you've got a brilliant route into generate that conversation. You could then have brilliant content out there for awareness creation and so on, which is then either you're doing that through email, you're doing that through paid, you're doing that through social selling activities. However, if what you are doing, if the mindset hasn't been changed and the behaviors haven't been changed, you can have all these, even these perfect technologies that Gartner are predicting that they're going to come through. If you haven't shifted that mindset or challenged that behavioral process to think differently, all these predictions, all this stuff is all for nothing. And it was a post from Tom Goodwin, who I follow. I think he's brilliant. I really enjoy his content. I read his most recent book as well. Highly recommend it, Digital Darwinism. So I'm going to read this post verbatim. This was a day ago. So what are we? I said 21st. So this was the 20th of December, 2022, where he posted this. People get disruption wrong. It's not about tech. Classic example is IKEA. Disrupted furniture by challenging the assumption that people only buy pre-made items. Decimating shipping costs changed unit economics profoundly. Dyson disrupted the vacuum market by challenging the assumption people wouldn't pay more than $300 for a machine and didn't care about them much. Nespresso challenged the assumption people wouldn't spend 10x more to have coffee at home, so long as it was better. Airbnb challenged the idea that people wouldn't sleep in a stranger's home. Uber challenged the idea people wouldn't get into a stranger's car. Amazon challenged the idea people wouldn't buy lots of things that they couldn't touch first. YouTube challenged the idea that most people wouldn't be able to make good enough content themselves, and if they did, they'd still be happy to give it away for free. People assume it's about tech. It's about imagination and empathy. It's knowing what rules can be broken. Most disruptive companies are not remotely disruptive. Allbirds shoes change little about the market. Netflix doesn't really alter that much about the rules of TV business. Instacart is a remarkably stupid idea and company. Carvana simply moves the cost to other places. We need more thought about what disruption changes the game and what simply uses modern tech. And this then takes me to my final thoughts around my anti-predictions for 2023, because all the predictions actually are technology related. The technology is going to solve, technology is going to solve, technology is going to solve. What we need to do, if we take the concept that Tom has talked about, is challenging the idea, challenging the status quo in terms of how we actually sell. And a brilliant piece authored by Brent Adamson, who is the co-author of Challenger Sale. He published this in February of this year, around sales and marketing is becoming obsolete. And then he shared the story, which is AI. There's a podcast. I'll put the link to the podcast in the both podcasts. So he shared a story of Jenna Pipchuk from Smart Technologies, a Canadian technology business that sells into the education sector, where they, just after COVID hit, rewrote their entire sales and marketing process and built what they call the unified commercial engine. So they identified what roles needed to happen by whom at what point during their sales end-to-end sales process. They did away with things like a handoff between sales and marketing. It meant they had to reskill. It meant they had to let go some people that couldn't be reskilled to what needed to be done, and they built what they called the unified commercial engine. When they went to their CEO to do this, the CEO said, I don't believe it's going to work. But if you believe it's going to work, then, and you trust each other to do it, then I trust you to do it because that's what I'm paying you to do. And it works, and it's been extraordinarily successful. So I then recorded a podcast with Jenna, talk about how she and her colleague, Jeff Lowe, no relation to me, did this. I also recorded a podcast with Brent to talk through the broader thinking around all of this. So if you want to go into 2023 and beyond and really start to challenge and really start to be different, you need to actually start challenging assumptions and ideas of what you believe to be true. And some things around this, not only learning from what Jenna did at Smart Technology in terms of building the unified commercial engine. I believe one of the biggest fundamental challenges we have in the world of sales more broadly, I'm talking broad brushstroke here, is incentives. And driving this quarter-on-quarter incentive just drives the behaviors that we don't want, which then actually also means that we're not using the technology in a way that probably could be worked more efficiently if you're trying to drive that quarter on quarter. So here's a challenge of some sales leaders out there. Why don't you go to your sales teams and ask those that want to stay on commission and those that don't want to stay on commission, and do an A/B test and work with your finance team and figure out over the last 3 years what's been the average kind of comp across those that have been either hitting quota or not quite hitting quota, and why don't you guarantee that to them? Why don't you guarantee this over 12 months? And of course, you'll have high performers who are smashing it out the park and will want the kickers on their sales commission. But why don't you say to those individuals, fine, we're going to guarantee this. We're going to take away commission structure. We're going to take away quarter-on-quarter results, CRO. I'm going to challenge the FD and say, you know what, we're going to do our numbers. I mean, 12 months, we're going to do it. We'll get to that number that you need to get to by 12 months' time and see what happens. Think about your end-to-end process. Think about, actually, we've got some really good cold callers. So let's point to cold calling. We've got some really good people who are on the social media side of things. So let's point to that. We've actually got some good people who are seeing great success from an email perspective. So let's point to that. Let's put them into a pod, or using Jenna's term, a unified commercial engine, and let them just go to market. Let them go to market in a way they believe works and how they are seeing success, rather than necessarily forcing these new technologies onto people where it may not be relevant, but also forcing our perceived truths of what we knew worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, which evidently, if we are to believe all the narrative out there around sales not hitting numbers and lots of layoffs happening and the mental health within salespeople and so on and so forth. And this is back to Tom's point. People assume it's about tech. Don't get swayed into the sexy technology. Yes, there is technology out there, which in my view, you need to have, but it's then around, is that technology being enabled in a way that's going to make your sales teams successful? But it all comes down to one single point of truth, as your customers and your clients. And without them, we are nothing. Without our customers repeatedly staying with us, repeatedly renewing with us, we are nothing. So why don't you go and have a conversation with them? Why don't you go and talk to them and find out, why did you buy from us? What's working? What isn't working? What are you seeing from the competition that's working and that isn't working? If we could do something differently, go and actually have a human conversation. Pick up the phone to your top 10, top 30, top 100 best customers out there. Ask what's working. Go and speak to all the people that didn't renew with you in the last 6 months. Why did you not renew? What could we have done differently? What did you replace us with, if anything? How's that working out with you? Go and talk to the people that fundamentally buy what you do. Listen, learn, and iterate with them. Hope you found that interesting and insightful. That's my take on the 2023 anti-predictions. Feel free to challenge me in terms of what you think. Put your comments in the comment section. I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and listening across this year. It's been amazing. You've helped me breach the 10,000 download. I never thought I would do that, and of course that's all down to my brilliant guests, but you also my brilliant listeners. If you want to be on this podcast, you know what to do. If you think people should be on this podcast, you know what to do. But for me, on the 21st of December 2022, this is going to be my last one for this year. So wherever you are in the world, we're going to wish you a very, very happy Christmas and a very happy new year. And let's see what 2023 brings us. It's going to be fun no matter what.